As a business-to-business marketer, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long, and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. Isn't it time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you? LinkedIn ads empower marketers with solutions for you and your customers. LinkedIn ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful environment. On LinkedIn, you'll have direct access to and build relationships with decision makers. Of the 875 million users on the network, 180 million are senior-level executives, 10 million are C-level executives. You will also be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B. And they work. Audiences exposed to brand messages on LinkedIn are 6 times more likely to convert. LinkedIn ads also ranked #1 for security, community, and ad experience as part of Business Insider's Digital Trust Study. Here at Sway Group, LinkedIn is a pivotal part of our day-to-day and is just absolutely vital for building relationships with clients and with our employees. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome to The Art of Sway, the podcast that uncovers the power of influence and its impact on all areas of our lives. I'm your host, Danielle Wiley. Each week, we'll explore the many facets of influence through candid conversations with industry insiders, from brand marketers to social workers, educators, leaders, and more. Let's dive in. Bridget's career in commerce began when she was 12 years old. Her mom worked in a department store, and Bridget would help with displays and stock after school. While Bridget now has over 20 years of digital commerce, strategy, creative, and marketing experience, she feels those early lessons were essential to her POV today. E-commerce needs to be as human as possible to turn heads and win hearts. Today, Bridget Fahrland leads Edelman's connected commerce offering to help clients drive transaction within the context of the brand, consumer journey, experience, and content. From marketplace advertising to influencer commerce to live shopping, connected commerce is about creating experiences in a world where people shop everywhere all the time. Over the years, her key clients have included 1-800-Flowers, Aqua Aston Hotels, Benefit Cosmetics, Charlotte Russe, Citibank, Clorox, Eddie Bauer, Godiva, Google, J&J, Mattress Firm, Microsoft, Nestle, TJX, The North Face, Tom's, Vans, and WW. When she is not working, Bridget loves hiking, playing pickleball, and spending time with her family and friends. She lives in Portland, Oregon, with her wife and daughter. I met Bridget super early in my career when I was just a kid. It was so great to reconnect with her and just really interesting to catch up on her career and hear her perspective on where digital commerce is now. Having both of us been at the forefront of the creation of digital commerce before it was even a thing and before it had any rules, it's kind of crazy to reflect back on how far we have come. I hope you enjoy. Well, I'm just so excited to catch up with you and have you on. Like, it's crazy to me that you're at Edelman now because I spent so much time there myself. And we, of course, worked together in the way pre-Y2K, like way early days, building some of the very first e-commerce websites ever. Way early times, pre-social media, anything. So I'd love for you to just share kind of like what your journey has been from there to here to kind of bring us up to speed.
Sure.
Bring me
it
up
was
to speed.
Such an intoxicating time. You know, it's not like there haven't been amazing highlights in my career still and wonderful things to look forward to. But like when you think back to that time we started working together, it was like we were making up everything as we went along. Yeah. And we were all so tightly knit because we were just figuring everything out together. There was no like, oh, that's your area of my expertise, that's mine. So I think what was great about my early days at Fry is like I wanted to be a copywriter. Like that's what I wanted to do. But as you know, in the early days of e-commerce, we had to figure everything out. So quickly I became a strategist. I became somebody who knew user experience, though we didn't even call it user experience back then. We called it navigation. I became involved in the creative. It was just like everything was there as an opportunity to learn and do. So I'm really thankful for that time in my life. And then I evolved more into strategy than creative over time, though I still like to get my hands on copy when possible.
Yeah. I was the same. I remember at that same job writing all the copy for the first Ortega Mexican, like the Ortega
Yes.
taco site. I wrote the intros to every recipe. And I still wonder, like, if you go to Ortega.com, like, are some of those still, like, are some of the recipe headers still my
Have you
words?
been back to it? Usually.
Not in forever. I don't know if I'd recognize. I
You
mean,
might, yeah.
how unique is it to talk about like a taco casserole? I don't know.
Back then it was. Back then it
Yeah.
was. And I always say though, like it's like more dangerous than looking into the sun is looking back at a digital experience you've been part of like a year later because inevitably it's changed and you'll be
Yeah.
disappointed. So maybe you shouldn't look back.
Yeah, no, it's not.
So from Fry, I was at Fry, this is like unheard of in these days, but I was at Fry for 14 years.
Wow.
And I actually stayed longer than Dave Fry, who, by the way, still friends, still
That's
see him.
awesome.
Wonderful, wonderful person. And I really feel like, I owe so much to him because he really took a chance on me. I mean, I knew nothing when he hired me. Fry was acquired by Micros, and actually Dave exited out. I stayed on a little bit, but it became a very technology forward company versus user forward or creative forward. So I left Fry for Fluid,
Yeah.
where it was much more creative mindset, creative led agency. And I think there I really learned a lot more about brand and about storytelling and really that intersection of creativity and technology. From Fluid, again, they were acquired by Astound, which became more system integration. It was all very, until Edelman, actually, it was all very flagship site based. Like omni-channel meant just store, just the website, right? It didn't
Got it.
mean so Edelman's been wonderful because it really has all those pieces that you really need for commerce these days. It has the social, the influence, the content, right? All of that.
Right.
But yeah, so that's been my evolution, which is a little bit like the evolution of commerce itself from like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it didn't. I mean, a lot of that stuff didn't exist. Like I remember at the job I had after Fry, I was still just working on building websites, and then all of a sudden blogs started showing up. I remember I made a deck called like what is web 2.0 and like would teach people about it and try to figure out how
Yeah.
to, I mean, like we really saw all this stuff develop, like be born out of nowhere. And
Mhm.
it's commerce though is
Right.
interesting. Like
Right.
first there were websites that were just content, and then commerce made its way into it. And then like even with social media, like that wasn't, people weren't buying things on like, but everything inevitably always turns to commerce,
No, it does. It
right?
does. And I think that's right. Absolutely. And I think some of that's good and some of that's
Yeah.
bad, right? Like, um, I think what's good about that is it becomes this realization from the client that, like, okay, that's nice that so many people saw this, but does that matter? How is that impacting my business? And I think usually the first go around of commerce is kind of clunky. So like early social commerce is
Yeah.
just like
Bad.
it was just like a clickable ad in your feed that felt very awkward, right? And that in and of itself has evolved a lot to become more contextual, to become more authentic.
And to be trackable. Like when it first
Yeah.
started, you couldn't even track if anyone was actually buying some. Like you're like, well, they clicked, hope they bought something.
Right, right. I mean, what we can track now is just absolutely
Yeah.
astounding to me. Like beyond even conversion, but like general sales lift and new customer acquisition and velocity
Yeah.
and all of that. Yeah.
You, when we were kind of like going back and forth on what to talk about today, you talked about the evolution of commerce from centralized to decentralized. And that's
Hmm.
kind of what we're talking about here. So it's like you have to reach people. You can't really, it's very
Yeah.
hard for us, right? Like it was so much easier when you're like, okay, they'll be here or they'll be here, and that's that. And now for us, it's great because now clients need content on all of these platforms and they have to try to reach someone wherever. It's opportunity for us, but it's also a lot to keep your hands on all of it. And the other thing that's tricky about it is that all the platforms have different types of audiences and a different type of, like, it's not enough to create something for Instagram and just cross post it to TikTok because it's not gonna, like, even the minute, like we were playing around with our own like corporate
Yes.
social profiles, and like even something as silly as like putting like an Instagram reel does super well if you put like a graphical cover on it, but if you do that on TikTok it tanks. Like
Mm-hmm.
just little minute things like that's
Mm.
so much work for brands.
You know, I agree with you, but I think it's a good thing. So first of all, like I think the move from centralization to decentralization, like you and I live it because we see that we have to make content shoppable. We have to make social shoppable, and it can all happen anywhere. And the path is no longer linear. It's not like, oh, I saw this ad here and then I went to the website and then I went to the store. It's like the funnel has
Yeah.
totally collapsed. You can become aware, engaged, and convert all in one click. Now, it usually still takes 4 or 5 kind of sites of it, but it all is designed to happen at once.
Yeah.
People are shopping everywhere all the time. Again, that doesn't mean they're necessarily buying, but they're constantly exposed to new products and things. So, in terms of it being a lot of work, I agree it is, but I never wrote this article and I still kind of want to write this article because when you have clients complain about like how much effort all the content is or all the creative is, I want to be like, you have a staff of 50 at your flagship store folding t-shirts and rehanging and steaming sweaters all day. It's all a lot of work. Like, spoiler alert, making money is a lot of work. Like,
Yeah.
so yes, it's a lot of work, but it needs to be done so it feels like it fits into the feed and it doesn't, I mean, it has to obviously stand enough to attract attention, but not in the wrong way. So I think that's good that things need to be bespoke to
Yeah.
each platform. Otherwise you kind of get back to that broadcast mindset of I'm just going to post this ad on all the channels.
True.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and there's still brands that sadly do that, but it's not working out so well for them.
Yes, we won't mention them by name.
One of the things that's been interesting to me is just kind of looking at social commerce and influencers in particular, just because that's what we do day in and day out. It's been interesting to me to see kind of where it falls on the funnel and where people think it should fall on the sales funnel and how those expectations keep shifting
Yes.
up and down. Like I think initially it was always kind of top of funnel, kind of in that same
Mm,
world as PR, which was kind of nice for us because we have, like, I feel like our measurement is better than
mm,
traditional PR measurement. Like we're not multiplying stuff by
yeah,
3 or any of that like fishy stuff that goes on.
I know. What?
What, really? And but then like with like the burst in popularity of D2C, there was suddenly this new expectation that someone's going to post something and people are going to click and immediately purchase it. And that's kind of, I mean, there are very few creators can make that happen. You know, we know who they are and it's great to use them, but like that's not
Mhm.
going to make sense for like a dish soap. Right. Well, I
Right.
mean, maybe, but like it's
Mhm.
I don't know, like that's you can't rely on that all the time. So
No.
there was just this article in Ad Age about D2C companies moving all their money out of influencer because it's not inspiring direct purchase anymore, which is crazy. Like
Hmm.
that's
I would question how they're measuring it then, for sure. No matter what medium it is, it seems there's always been an improper expectation of immediate conversion. And to me, conversion is a long game. It's like, sure, there's people who will add to cart and buy right away. But like, I think it needs to be measured at least over 2 weeks of exposure. I think you need to look at direct clicks, but also then look at general sales lift and velocity of those products, because that tells a bigger story. And I think also you have to look at like, well, who are you using as an influencer and how many times they're posting? Because sometimes a brand, and you know who they are, they'll pay for like 4 posts. It's like, well, if there's only 4 posts, then what are you expecting from that,
Right.
right? So
Right.
I think the expectations need to be, I mean, I think that's probably our jobs, is to set those proper expectations. And so I think it's like the question of where in the funnel. It's the whole funnel. Here's what success is at each step of the way, versus like, oh, we're doing this
Yeah.
just for awareness or just for engagement or just for conversion.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the measurement now is so much better. We actually can capture lower funnel activities now, which
Mhm.
has helped kind of move it down. But like, that doesn't mean that the
Yes.
top part of the funnel work went away. I think that's what frustrates me, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
sometimes I mean, as I say this in a Amazon sweater that I bought because the cooking influencer I follow on Instagram told me to. But like, it's just because we can see that doesn't mean all that awareness is no longer important.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And how are they might not be able how are they going to be able to track that you bought that sweater if you didn't buy it directly? And I mean, again, looking at that sales lift during that period of time and after. And I also, for one client, we did a campaign where it definitely made more than they put into it, but it had a huge number of impressions, huge, really high engagement, and decent sales. And at the end of the day, I was like, the story is you had free awareness plus. Like back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean 6 months ago, you would have paid the same amount just
Right.
for
Yeah.
awareness.
Yeah. My
So
favorite
yeah,
clients are the ones who look at
yeah.
everything holistically. Like we have this one client that's amazing with it,
Mm,
and they do these limited time offers, and they're doing also, they're doing
mm.
TV, they're doing influencer, they're doing every tactic you can think of, but when something sells out or it does really well, they're happy with all their partners. Like it's like a we did it, right? Like they get that it all
That's great.
fits
Oh, I
together.
love that spirit and that attitude. And also that probably means you have a seat at the table with the other partners and agencies when you're working on things.
Took a while,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yes.
which is, it's a lot of egos and a lot of territory and a lot of fear when that works out. That
Yeah.
it takes that's a really special client you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're precious to me.
Yeah.
So, talking about shoppable and influencer, as I said, like we can measure so much more now than we ever had. It's really exciting to me,
Mhm.
especially like looking in the food space, for example, right? Like, because a sweater is one thing that's
Mm.
easy, but then you're
Yes,
talking
that's
about like we work with like a state commodity board selling dairy products or like
mhm.
yogurt or anything perishable.
Yeah, you do work for, I don't know, am I allowed to say Stonyfield, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they've been a
yeah.
client for a long time, but like that's hard to that traditionally was super hard to they're actually the first client that we did a shoppable program for. They did this program where the links that the influencers included popped open an Instacart cart with the yogurt in the cart. Like, and then
Mhm.
sudden like it's a game changer now. You can
It
suddenly
really
that
is.
seemed impossible.
I think a big part of that change was because of Instacart and their technology push. I mean, certainly the pandemic, though, we're seeing a lot of online. We're not seeing online grocery and delivery dropping drastically post COVID. Like people realize like, oh, maybe I don't want to spend my time going to the store to buy these these things that I already know, right?
Yeah.
Like I'd rather spend my time differently.
Yeah.
And then I also think like Target and Walmart and their evolution into becoming marketplaces. So they were all primed to make this possible in terms of how they measure, how they can integrate, um, all of that really made it possible. I would say I've worked with both Gerber and
Yeah.
Sweet Earth on influencer, and I love working with food brands. I feel like they're very open to test and learn. They're excited about it. There's great partners in the space. We recently worked with Smart Commerce
Yeah.
on a
They're great.
campaign.
We
Yeah.
worked with Basketful, which Smart Commerce just bought. But they're awesome. They're like former General
Yes,
Mills guys
yes,
who were like, we can make
yes.
this cool thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have, because it's like now you can choose right in the post which retailer you want to go to. The measurement's great. The inventory is great. I mean,
It knows the inventory. It'll
yeah,
switch your store. It'll change
exactly.
it'll change like a quart of milk to 2 pints of milk,
I know.
whatever
Yeah.
ounces of milk.
Yes. I know what you mean.
Not an
Yeah, it's
expert.
like forget Chat GPT. I'm really into this real-time inventory.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Are there any other cool influencer related shopping technologies that you've seen, or just best practices in general
Yes.
with Shoppable?
So I would say for best practices, I know they're really successful, but like I would say a haul is the exact opposite of what I think a best practice is. Like I think it has to be, I mean, hauls can be authentic, but it can't be just like about the product. To me, it's like the product should be in situ. It should be in the context of what the influencer's life is and what they're doing,
Yeah.
and not the main act. It should be the supporting actor or actress in the
Yeah.
story. I also think you have to have a mix of mid-tier and micro in your influencer campaign. I mean, you need those mid-tiers for the numbers and the impression, but I don't know what you're finding, but like really we're finding like micro is going to drive more direct clicks, and that
Yeah. Where we do pretty much, I mean, it's probably 90%
mhm.
micro. I mean, and we do a lot of
Yeah.
nano too, especially we do a lot of local stuff. Like we work on store
Mhm.
openings for a national retail client. And I mean, they want people within 20 miles of where the store is opening. You have to be open to
Yes.
nanos for
Yes.
something
I
like
think
that.
it's like, so then it's setting client expectations as part of the best practice, as we talked about before, and letting them know what to expect from each of those tiers. I think there's a really great opportunity for nanos too. Like they're, very established influencers. There's scheduling, there's fees, and it's not like they don't deserve it all, but I think nanos are a great place to do test and learn. They're open to trying new things. So so I agree with you there. And then and then I would say the final best practice is a best practice for any form of commerce, which is giving the customer the choice. Like we talked about smart commerce, they give you the choice of which retailer to go to, or if you're going to do an in-app store, you still have the choice to check out on the site versus in-app. Like, don't force the customer down one path. Give them that flexibility. Oh, and one other thing, which is we often think of influencer as in the feed, but what I'd love to see brands do more of is leveraging that content for their digital experiences on their site. And I mean, there's boosting and whitelisting in the feed, but why not leverage that content for their site as well?
Support for The Art of Sway and all the other shows on the Marketing Podcast Network is provided by Memento. If you have your own podcast, you know producing it is half the battle. Promoting it is the other half. What if you could upload your episode, video or audio, and have AI pull out the best moments to use in social media promotions? You can with Memento. Upload the video or audio, review the recommended clips, click a couple of buttons, customize the colors and fonts, and hit save. Instant Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, Facebook or LinkedIn posts, all with video or audio embedded for dynamic promotions that drive people to the episode. And the AI kicks out show notes, transcripts, and even social media captions. All you do is review and post. Go check it out. MPN listeners can try it for free at bit.ly/MomentoMPN. That's bit.ly, bit.ly/MomentoMPN. We saw more of that. We saw kind of we always tell our clients like all the ways they can use the client. Like when we do a wrap up report, there's always a slide like, here's how to make it work harder. Here's everything that you can do with this like, you have the rights to use this content for a year or whatever they negotiated.
Mhm.
Here's everything you can do. And historically, they haven't been the not great listeners. But
Yeah.
I will say that
Yeah.
during COVID, we saw kind of a renaissance of it because suddenly they couldn't do all the photo shoots and video shoots that they wanted to do. And we had clients who wanted to update their entire website but couldn't pull together a photo shoot. And so they were using the content that we were creating for them a lot more broadly, just because of necessity, because they couldn't make it themselves.
That's great. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lost
Yeah.
opportunity for sure.
So I'd love to talk. I was thinking about this before when you were talking about the different ways that people shop, because I have a 21-year-old and I see the way that she shops for stuff online, like with groceries, and how
Mhm.
like there's such, like I still make my list for the week, and I, even if I'm using Instacart, and
Mhm.
this kid is like door dashing groceries every other day to her apartment.
Mhm.
Like she'll get like, oh, I want
Mhm.
some noodles. She just gets
And then it'll just yeah.
and then,
Yeah.
like it's still grocery. And I'm like, why are you getting groceries from door? Like, what are you doing? Like, but there's
Uh-huh.
a huge, there are so many differences with the generations, but just curious to know what you're seeing. And of course, you guys just put out like a really cool article. Would you call that an article? Kind of like a little mini white
Right.
paper today on Gen
Yeah.
Z.
Yeah, yeah. White paper piece. It's not yeah, mini white paper. Um Yeah, that was really interesting because we have a Gen Z lab. So we got to talk to real Gen Zers and we had a Gen Z co author. And I think that made all the difference. So we interviewed Gen Zers about how they shop. We didn't start with the idea that we were going to bust 5 myths. That came out of the work we did.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really, surprised that they are such considered purchasers. They're not, I think I came in thinking like, oh, this is the TikTok made me buy it generation. Maybe TikTok does make them buy it, but not in that moment, is what we learned. Like they see something on TikTok, they may actually just add it to their collections. They might go buy it on Amazon. And here's another surprise. They shop on Amazon. Big evil Amazon. Who knew? What I learned
Yeah.
is I think they will definitely change the way we all shop because they're using all the channels, all the devices, all the technology, but they really want to be in control. So for them, being in control means considering purchases, adding a lot to a cart and kind of using that as their lookbook and wish list to go back later and pare it down to one thing. We didn't talk to them actually. I mean, it's interesting about your daughter. We didn't talk to them about grocery
Yeah.
habits. So that actually brings up a really good point. I mean, I do know that they order a fair amount of
Yeah.
DoorDash or Uber Eats for meals, but I don't know about for groceries. The fact that they're, just as remember when the whole elder millennial thing came out,
Yeah.
which I still laugh at, like there's such a clear divide within Gen Z of those who are still at home and those who have recently graduated and are in the workforce. So it's really
Yeah.
there's that same divide. It's all about life stages and milestones. And then of course it's also still about, I mean, this is the I have such a love-hate relationship with consumer segmentation.
Yeah, you're not the first guest to I have a actually coming out shortly. We have I interviewed a professor here at the University of Michigan, and he does like organizational psychology at the business school, and he talks a ton about like how people interact with each other at the workplace. And I kept trying to get him to talk about the different generations, and he's like, I don't even know. He's like, I don't even know them. Like, I don't even know what Gen Z is versus millennial. He's like, people are different and they fit into their categories, but he's like, I never lump them by generation. Like he refused to engage on it.
It's so hard because if you say when marketers talk about Gen Z, I feel like they have a very white upper middle class version of this consumer segment. And so like how do you factor in income and class? How do you factor in race? How do you factor in gender? Like all of those things are, I would say, as important as your age and then your whatever life milestone you're at. I mean, my daughter's almost 10. I had a child very late in life. And so that makes me like a fair amount of my mom friends are millennials, so it's all very
Yeah.
complex.
Yeah, it was funny. My
Yeah.
business partner she has a son who's 22, but then she has a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how to reach Generation Alpha, and we were asking her, and she was like, she's like, you kind of have to market to their parents because none of them are allowed to be on
Mhm.
social media. And she's like, but not me. Like, I'm not their parent. Like,
Yeah.
she's like, I'm so much older than any of the other parents.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at that age, they still have no concept of how much anything costs.
No, I don't know that gets
Yeah.
that much better, but
Oh.
sorry.
Something not to look forward to.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm just jumping all over the place, but I had posted something, I guess it was last week, this message we got back from a creator we were reaching out to that was like, we had been asking her for her rates because we wanted to use her on a program. We got back this kind of mini manifesto on boundaries and taking time, and that
Mhm.
urgency is not how she operates, and she's easing slowly into the new year. And this was mid-March. You had an interesting point that like something usually bothers you when there's some kind of envy going on there, which I think is true because I did think like must be nice. But I
Mhm.
think the other
Mhm.
thing too, it was just kind of, I mean, that example in particular, I felt like it was like a manifesto, and I was like, lay off, lady. Like, I like it too. Like we didn't ask for a lecture. We just want to know if you want this
Yeah.
job. Like, get back to us when you get back to us. Like, why did we need this lecture from you?
Yeah, you felt it was a little holier than
Yeah, a
thou.
little
Yeah.
bit. But just in general, I think like there's all different layers to it, right? Like she, as a creator, ultimately is in the client business, maybe a
Right.
little bit like one layer removed from how we are. And I mentioned in the comments in that we switched to a 4-day work week last summer and have
Oh,
kept it
wow.
going. Thank you.
Congratulations. Wow.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, we do value work-life balance, but it's very difficult in the client industry to provide that both for yourself and
Mhm.
for your employees, because clients can be hysterical and angry, and often it's not their anger. They're being
Mhm.
yelled at by someone else who's being yelled at someone else, and we're just kind of the recipients of it. And they reach out to you when they need you, and they don't care that it's 11
Mhm.
p.m. your time. Or I still remember a Christmas Eve writing blogger
Mhm.
contest rules because the client insisted that this thing had to launch. Like,
Oh my God.
clients want what they want. I'd be interested to hear your perspective on how to kind of set those
Mhm.
boundaries when you're working in an industry that is kind of notorious for not respecting them.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I've been thinking a lot about it since we had that brief exchange on the post, because it clearly brought up something for you, and it also brought up something for me. And I just also really appreciate you then sharing your perspective. Like, you're running a business, so I could see like your protective CEO, like you're also
Yeah.
protective of your people and how they're treated. So I've been thinking a lot about it, and I realized I think what's really messing us up in the work world is this word balance, because that makes somehow the word balance makes you think things should be 50-50.
Yeah.
And it's really a mix. And I feel like I haven't always been good at it, but I think I've gotten really good at something because it works for me. So I can share what works for me. I don't know if it'll work for
Yeah.
everybody, which is like kind of like, am I leading a life full of things that I like to do? Do I feel like I'm sacrificing anything? I mean, I'm not saying like I get to do everything I love every day. But over time, again, this is like the theme of this conversation. Over time, over a 3-month period, if I look back, have I gotten to do the things I love?
Yeah.
And so you have to be happy with your mix. And so if you love working and you love what you do, I think it's okay that it might be more than 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week, right? Like for me, it is. And I like what I
Yeah.
do. And but I think it does, the availability is the rub. For me, I get up, I have some East Coast clients. I get up earlier because I have a young daughter. The way my day goes, and this is what works for me, is I usually start work around 7:30 a.m. But I take an hour, sometimes 2 hours in the middle of the day to run an errand, do something outside, play pickleball, walk the dog, whatever. And then I'm back online, and then I take time off for my family
Yeah.
in the evening. And then for me personally, I don't mind working like from 10 to 11 again at night and being it. And so I usually respond to everything I would think in like a 12-hour period, but I don't think it's healthy to be in a world where you're just sitting waiting for to be like constantly responding to emails or messages. Like, I think it is important to set that boundary of like, I'll get back to you, but it might be a few
Yeah.
hours. It might be it might be a half a day.
Yeah. Which I don't think I think sometimes we come up with these crazy expectations for ourselves and the person on the other
Hmm.
side doesn't share them. I mean, half a day is
Right.
reasonable for
It
anyone.
is. It really is. Like I've been upset when people have taken more than a day to respond, but I've never been upset if it takes somebody a few
Yeah.
hours or you don't know. I mean, they could be at a doctor's appointment. Who knows?
I
So
remember I worked with someone at Edelman. He wasn't there very long, and this might be telling. And his out of off every time he took a vacation, his out of office said, "I'm on vacation. I'll be back on this date. I'm going to delete everything I receive during that time. So email me
no,
back." Huh?
no, no. I mean, I think if you go on vacation, you can say I'm not checking email, but then we all
Yeah.
read
He's like,
through
if
it
it's
all
really
when we get
important,
back.
you can email me back after that time.
No,
Yeah.
I disagree with that. I I don't think you should respond right away, but then it's also just getting your work done. I mean, if you can get it done in less time and it's still amazing, then that's okay too.
Yeah. No, we say
Yeah.
that a lot because I mean, it's hard when we don't force everyone to take Friday off. Like it's kind of just a flex schedule. Most people just
Mhm.
choose to take all Friday off. But I mean, get the stuff done. Like do what you need to do. And we're not
Right.
like,
Right.
we don't have spy cameras on you at your desk. And
I think the Friday thing is smart because you know how they talk about quiet quitting? I think we're all quietly taking half of Fridays off
yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I think especially as parents, like what I've talked about this before, but we did the 4-day work week as a test in the summer and then
mhm.
kind of asked our employees how they felt it went. Did they get feedback from clients? Do they want to keep it? And the response was so over, like it was, people were like in tears. Like, this is the best thing that's ever
Mhm.
happened to me. Like, I finally have a day for myself. My kids aren't home. My spouse isn't
Exactly.
home. Like, I can go to I can like just go wander around TJ Maxx for 2 hours if I want to. I
Yes.
can like go get my hair done and not feel guilty. I can like sit and read a
Yes.
book.
That's why I take that time Monday through Friday. And, if my boss is listening to this, I get all of my work done and I respond, but like that's my
Yeah.
time, right? My daughter's at school, my wife's at work. I mean, the other thing I will say is my wife's a teacher. I have friends in the medical field. There is the reality that what I'm doing is it's im- it's important, it's fulfilling, but nobody's like future is hinging on
Yeah.
me being available every
I
minute.
had a
It's like
colleague who
putting it in
used to say, like,
perspective.
it's PR, not ER,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was one. I know we're running out of time here, but one of the things that we talked about chatting about was kind of this struggle of, I want to make sure I don't put words in your mouth, but like excitement about the innovation and creativity of what you're doing,
Mhm.
while at the same time, like what kind of impact are you making on society and the environment and
Yes.
kind of that
My God, this
dichotomy.
just came up today because I was talking to somebody at Edelman who's moved from the brand side to the purpose and impact side. I'm so jealous. She's like, yeah, she's like, I was just questioning myself, like, what am I doing? I'm just selling stuff. And I'm thinking, oh boy, that's what I'm thinking too. And so I really do struggle with it because I think I love, like, I was just brainstorming with a team today about how, I mean, it's funny you brought up like dish soap because I was actually talking about like selling more soap. It wasn't dish soap.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, great. So I'm going to help put out more plastic bottles into the world. Awesome. But the creativity and the energy behind it is really alluring to me, and I really like that piece of it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm doing a good enough job with this struggle. I struggle with it. I think where I find peace is like I think I have good human relations and an impact. Like I treat people kindly and fairly and work on elevating junior employees. So I feel good at my impact in the world there. I do some outside volunteer work, but this question and a comment somebody made today made me realize like I really need to start thinking more about how to merge what I do with impact and purpose. So stay tuned there.
Yeah. I think hopefully, yeah. Well, and I'm seeing more and more clients. I just think, especially with Gen Z and the fact that they are so vocal about these issues and social justice and the environment and wanting to support. I mean, I know, as you said, they are still buying from Amazon, but ultimately wanting to support brands that are doing good. Like, I think I'm seeing, at least with our clients, just an acknowledgement of that and a desire to change how they're working.
And we can help them.
So, I mean, I'm hopeful that some of it will get better.
We can help them take little steps. We can talk to them about their packaging. Oh, one thing I talk to them about is ship times. Like Amazon has set up this world where people expect everything same day or next day. But there are things you can wait for that you don't like. So like really thinking through the ship times that make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the item.
It's crazy how just our perception has changed. I'm always like, it's not same day.
Right. Exactly. But it's like something I don't need for 2 weeks anyway. So who cares? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome. And I think I told you this whole season is dedicated to women 50 plus because I am entering that stage of my life.
Congratulations.
This year.
It's a great,
I'm excited.
The best stage. It really is.
Yeah. So we're asking everyone who comes on this season to share with us a woman who influenced them in some way, whether it's work life or personal, just to give a shout out to someone who had an impact on your life.
Okay, so this is really hard, and I think of I don't know if you saw the Oscars, but I just loved when Jamie Lee Curtis said, "I'm hundreds of people."
I loved that
because it's so hard to choose one woman. I mean, my instinct immediately goes to my mom. She was a single mom. She really taught me to stand up for myself. But then there's also my grandmothers. Like one would like tell me dirty jokes at way too young of an age for me to be hearing dirty jokes. One took me to art museums. You know, I see my wife. She's so loyal and hardworking and caring. And then women I've worked with over the years, both bosses and colleagues. So I think there's women that come to mind who I think in my career have really shown how you can combine power and compassion. Like they're not afraid of their power, but they're also very compassionate, empathetic people. So I would give a shout out to Anne Sophie Hurst, Stephanie Wiseman, and Vanessa Cartwright, and my current boss, Pam Scheideller, as just being, they're badasses, but they're also like good people. And they also know, all of those people I just mentioned have this great way of knowing what's going on, knowing all the details, but not getting into your everyday business, but pushing when the push is warranted.
That's a skill.
Yeah. Still working on it.
Every day.
Yeah.
Well, this was wonderful. It was so great to catch up. I can't believe how long. I don't think I've seen you since the 90s.
I know. It's a long time.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please check back next Monday for a new episode featuring marketing conversations through the lens of influence. I am your host, Danielle Wiley, and this is The Art of Sway.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Gordon Glenister hosts an outstanding podcast called the Influence Global Podcast. Gordon, tell these fine folks what they're going to get when they listen.
We interview some amazing people from all around the world, whether they be influencers, content creators, brands, influencer platforms, anybody involved in the influencer industry. There's some fantastic guests that make a fine listen for you. You can find them on marketingpodcasts.net, or you can also find them on my own website, which is www.gordonglenister.com.
Or, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.